The way freedom changed during the Civil War was that people of any race were able to make money for themselves and their family. Before the Civil War, decisions like the Dred Scott versus Sandford decision brought the nation closer and closer to war despite all efforts. Major battles such as Antietam, the battle that led to the Emancipation Proclamation, were very bloody and had both sides suffering casualties. Both sides had advantages of their own. For the Union, they had a much greater army, but they weren't trained well and had pretty inexperienced officers. For the Confederacy, they had brilliant officers which carried them to victory in the East and early parts of the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation that changed the reason for war, the elimination of slavery in the Confederacy. The war turned when the Union received a brilliant general, Ulysses Grant, who helped his army win in the West. This ultimately won the war for the Union. After the war, the 13th Amendment was ratified, creating a new form of freedom in America.
Failing 2 times in the Supreme Court of Missouri and the St. Louis Circuit Court, he looks toward the U.S. Supreme Court in the case Dred Scott versus Sandford. Let us see how the court ruled this case.
I am Dred Scott, and I am 50 years old. I have been a slave most of my life. I have come here to seek freedom from my owner, Mr. Sandford.
You say that you should be given freedom from your owner, Mr. Sandford. Do explain.
My master takes me places, but when we get there, people give us odd looks. One day, I asked the white man why he looked at us like we don't belong. He says that slavery is banned over there. So I think that because my master takes me to them places, I should be free.
Interesting. And what is your defense, Mr. Sandford?
Well, to start off with, Your Honor, he is a slave. He doesn't know any better. All they are is property. Secondly, because he is my property, I have the right to travel with him as I please, and where I please. Just because I took him to me to temporarily live in the Wisconsin and Illinois territories does not make him a free man. His freedom would only be granted if I released him.
Well, we certainly have a lot to talk about. The jury and I will make an agreement. Well, we've reached a final agreement. For over a century, we, the superior race, has viewed blacks as inferior beings, and in the case of slaves, property. Therefore, Dred Scott will not be given any sort of citizenship or freedoms, and will be returned back to Mr. Sandford as property. In addition, a man of his race has no rights to sue in federal court.
Less than 3 months after the court ruling, Scott was transferred back to his original owners, the Blow family, after Sandford was found insane and went to an insane asylum. At the time, the Blow family were against slavery. They freed Scott and his family, finally granting Scott's wishes. This decision ties into American freedom because before the Civil War, the North and South took sides on different views on slavery. Some thought of them as people, while others thought of them as property.
In Antietam, Lee's armies, the Confederates, take their chances and cross into Maryland, enemy ground. He takes several forts along the way, but struggle with the strong forces of Harper's Ferry. The Union moves in to intercept them. With the Union's hookers and Sedgwick's failed attempts to secure Dunkirk Church, their objective, the battle shifts to French division of the Union Army against 2 brigades of Hill of the Confederate Army. Hill's brigades, who are on the sunken road due to heavy use, utterly destroy French's division, racking up 1,700 Union casualties before French retreats. By morning the next day, Burnside attacks Lee's right flank and channels most of his forces through a narrow bridge, which is guarded by only 400 Georgians at high ground. With heavy losses, he manages to get over the bridge, forcing the Georgians to retreat. Hill's troops rush in and save Lee's right flank. The Confederates slip back to Virginia without notice, for McClellan stalls. This ties in with the freedom of America, for it prompted Lincoln to write the Emancipation Proclamation, which abolished slavery in the Confederacy. 1. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any part subject to their jurisdiction. Congress shall have power to enforce its article by appropriate legislation. These two passages make up the 13th Amendment of the Constitution. It all started when the Union started creating ideas that a constitutional amendment should be ratified in order to abolish slavery permanently nationally after they won the war. After revisions and drafts, the Senate passed the amendment on April 8, 1864 in an almost unanimous vote. Support was given to allow the bill, including President Abraham Lincoln, and finally on January 31, 1865, the House finally passed the amendment. Lincoln signed the amendment, making it the only ratified amendment signed by a president. This amendment completely changed the nation, and many rights to the African Americans were debated. This ties in freedom in America because it completely abolishes slavery, forever changing the meaning of the words, all men are created equal. The Battle of Shiloh. After capturing Nashville, the Union ferries 40,000 troops to Corinth, which is a necessity for moving supplies and men on rail and is the only line connecting the Mississippi River to the Atlantic. The Confederates moved from Corinth to Grant's Camp, stationed at Savannah, and attacked early next morning.
Oh my Lord, I'm out!
The front lines are pushed back from the Union, and Hurlbut's army, the Union's right flank, is withered down, making Confederate Johnston's aggressive attacks. Johnston dies from the battlefield in the process. Sherman and Hurlbut retreat to higher ground as the middle flank, Wallace and Prentice's divisions, is surrounded and they surrender. The next day, Grant forces them back to Corinth and does not chase them.
Retreat!
This ends the bloodiest two-day battle in American history and is the impetus of the Union's conquest of the West. Battle of Gloria de Pass. In this battle, Major Chivington of the Union led 400 troops to advance, while Major Pyron of the Confederacy had 300 troops. Chivington pushed forward, forcing some rebels to surrender. The Confederates are pushed back, and Union cavalry captured the rear guard. The next day, reinforcements come on both sides. Union's Colonel Slow rides with 900 men, while the Confederates receive Lieutenant Colonel Scurry with 1,100 troops. The next day, Slow attacks, with the Confederates holding ground and slowing fires.
Retreat!
Scurry does the same thing, thinking he has won. Chivington's men, however, has destroyed all supplies and food at Scurry's camp. Causing the Confederates to retreat farther and farther until they run back to Texas. This ended all hope of Confederate land in the Southwest. The Petersburg Campaign. In this almost year-long campaign, Grant laid siege of Petersburg, the supplier of Lee's army in Richmond, the Confederate capital. Grant tried numerous ways to cut off railroad supply lines and assaults on Confederate camps. The most memorable raids include the Battle of Crater, where a tunnel was dug and gunpowder was put in place in order to create a hole, exposing the Confederate rear flank. The blast did the damage it was supposed to, but the leading division of the Union that was supposed to go around the crater to the Confederates instead ran straight into the crater, allowing the surviving Confederate soldiers to shoot down from a wall, slaughtering thousands, before the Union soldiers managed to get out and force the Confederates to retreat. After several months of fighting, Lee's army abandons Petersburg and Richmond, leading up to his surrender at Appomattox.